This is the Talkin Bout The Hoosiers podcast, presented by thehoosier.com. Before we jump into this video, pause it right now and go subscribe to the Hoosier.com website, now a part of On3 Sports, for exclusive content covering the Indiana Hoosiers, including exclusive interviews, live recruiting updates, and much more. Make sure to join our community. We really appreciate it.
And Hoosier Nation, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button here on our YouTube page. We got plenty of more content on here, including more talking about the Hoosiers podcast episodes, recruiting highlights, press conferences, and much, much more. It literally takes 2 seconds. Just do it right now, get it over with, and then go on and let's enjoy this new episode.
Hello and welcome to the Talkin Bout The Hoosiers podcast, brought to you by the Hoosier on 3. I'm Zach Browning with Kyler Staley. Kyler, it is live period 1 weekend. A lot of high school basketball going on this weekend. Not much in terms of the actual Indiana basketball or Indiana football stuff, but Darren DeVries, the Indiana coaching staff, a busy weekend for them, a busy weekend for a bunch of Indiana high school basketball targets on a handful of different circuits. But first off, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing good. Like you said, it is live period weekend. Obviously, there's coaches at all levels that are always out, right? You got D2 coaches, NAIA, JUCO, D3. Those guys are always out and stuff, but there's always seems to be just like a different buzz in the air when it's a live period weekend. Has a different feel, in the AAU scene and stuff, just knowing the fact that these high-level Division I coaches, their assistants, and pretty much whoever else, with those programs are out and stuff. So, but first live period weekend, I thought there was some pretty good stuff that came out of it as well. No new offers yet from Indiana. I would expect that to be coming next week or so. But I think there's some guys that stood out, some under the radar guys that stood out as well, not even just for Indiana, but just nationally as well. So it's been fun. It was a fun weekend and stuff. I don't know off the top of my head when the next live period weekend is, but it's going to be really interesting to see the guys that we watch this weekend, see how they perform, the next live period weekend down the road.
Of course, there was 3 main kind of events going on this weekend. You had Nike EYBL in Memphis. You had Adidas 3SSB in Iowa, and then Under Armour out in Ohio as well. A lot of different IU targets in action. We'll start with the Adidas 3SSB guys, Kyler, here. We'll start with a couple of guys that have already gotten Indiana offers. We'll first start with Indiana Elite. You look at the 2026 Indiana Elite team features Anthony Thompson, a 5-star guard who Indiana's been very active in recruiting. He's kind of a guard-forward hybrid. He had a pretty good weekend this past week, and also the 2027 Indiana Elite team features Jason Gardner Jr., who already has an Indiana offer, and Cooper Zachary, who doesn't as of now, but we've both talked are very high on him. We'll first start with Anthony Thompson. Thompson had a good weekend. It wasn't anything spectacular. He played in the first game on Friday night, did not play on Saturday, though, so kind of an awkward weekend there for him as far as the scheduling is concerned. But I like Anthony Thompson's game, Kyler, just the fact that he's so long, he can pretty much do it all. He's listed at 6'9", around 200 pounds. He's got the length to pretty much play 1 through 5. He's got the ability to pretty much play 1 through 4. He can shoot the ball, he can drive the ball, and he was fantastic this past weekend for Indiana Elite.
Yeah, Anthony Thompson, he's a guy that, the previous staff, they were high on as well. I think he had made a couple of unofficial visits to Indiana over the past couple of years. Mike Woodson was pretty high on him. He came from the Indiana Elite program. I think he's based out of Ohio, if I can remember correctly. And I think recently he narrowed down to his final 15. So still a lot of schools, that are still looking after him and stuff. And, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but could see kind of where his kind of recruitment is going. But yeah, he's a really good player, high athletic guy, highly touted forward, in the 2026 class. He's a guy that I think, any school that gets him, depending on what the rotation is and stuff, a guy that can come in and contribute right away. A lot of upside with him. Just his size, it's going to fit. It would fit pretty well, I think, with Indiana. What DeVries kind of wants to do, he wants versatile defenders. He wants guys that can make shots and just be athletic. So, Anthony Thompson, very, very highly touted guy, and a guy that's going to be. It's going to be interesting to see kind of where his recruitment kind of continues to trend to.
I know that was something that for sure stood out to me this weekend was the guys that Indiana specifically has been named in conversations with that has Indiana offers those types of guys, there's a theme, and it's the same thing with the current Indiana basketball roster. Versatility, positional, can play a lot of different positions, can do a lot of different things. I know there's a lot of guys we saw this weekend that fit that bill that Indiana's already offered, whether it's the 26 class or the 27 class. Another guy, two guys actually in the 2027 class with Indiana Elite, Jason Gardner Jr. and Cooper Zachary. Fantastic weekends for Indiana Elite. Indiana Elite's a really good team in the 2027 class. I know you're high on Cooper Zachary. I got my first chance to see him this past weekend in Iowa. I'm now very high on Cooper Zachary. He doesn't yet have an Indiana offer, kind of an under-the-radar guy. Jason Gardner Jr., fantastic as well. Just your quick thoughts on both of those two. I know they both play for Fishers, both a very talented high school basketball program in Central Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, the best backcourt duo in the state, and they've been that since probably the last half of their freshman season. Cooper Zachary, will start with him, a guy, obviously I was excited for you to get a chance to watch him and stuff. Very small guy and whatever and stuff. So, when you look at that, you don't judge a book by its cover, right? But like when you look at him and stuff, you're like, okay, he's small. We'll see what he can do and stuff. But I mean, production's key with him, and he produces at an extremely high level. Very smart player he's still an underclassman technically. Very smart player, a guy that can knock down shots. I think one game you said he went 7 for 11, if I remember, from three. That's super impressive. So when you see a guy like him, obviously, yeah, his size a little concerning, but you see him play on the floor and you're like, this guy plays like he's a senior, a fifth year, or a freshman in college or something like that. He's very mature for his age, and got leadership skills, got a lot of confidence in his game, doesn't let his smaller size, affect him whatsoever and stuff. He'll go at the defense and he'll make big time plays. So like you said, doesn't have an Indiana offer yet. I think the most recent offer he did get was Nevada, so doesn't even have a high major offer yet, really. So I fully expect that to change. I think it just takes really one high major to really just kind of take a chance on him, give him an offer and stuff, and I think that'll open up the floodgates. I could totally see his recruitment kind of being like similar to Braylon Mullins in a way, just kind of, as a little bit of an unknown player, got some good offers here and there and stuff, and then just skyrockets. By the time next summer, he's got all the blue bloods looking after him and stuff like that. So really, really good player, obviously. And then Jason Gardner Jr., his teammate, those two guys have been teammates, I think, since middle school. Teammates at Fishers, like you mentioned, and stuff. Jason Gardner Jr. does have an offer from Indiana, and it's confirmed that he does have an offer from DeVries as well. So he had an offer from the old staff and the new staff as well. So he's still a guy that's still on the radar of Indiana basketball, a guy that's just really, really good in the lane, a guy that can drive, facilitate, and can get buckets here and there and stuff. Obviously, I think 3-point shooting is probably the area that he needs to really kind of focus in on a little bit. And he said that to me last week when I went and saw him at a local event. The coaches want to see him, take that next step as a 3-point shooter. He's a true combo guard, in my opinion, but another productive guy. And he's a guy that I think would also fit really, really well in DeVries' system, a guy that's a defender, a guy that can make plays on the ball. As long as he just continues to improve and stretch his game out a little bit more, he's still going to be a guy that I think a lot of schools are going to really want in their program.
Yeah, just a couple more quick notes on Zachary and Gardner Jr. I saw that Indiana Elite win over Game Elite. It was a 91-66 win. Darren DeVries, Kenny Johnson, Drew Adams, all in attendance sitting courtside for that game. Jason Gardner Jr. had 18 points. He had 8 assists as well. Cooper Zachary, you mentioned it, 7 of 11 from 3, had 24 points. He hit 5 in a row at one point in the second half. The notes I wrote down for him was at the very beginning of the game, I wrote small. Just in all capital letters, I wrote small. But then he ended up guarding Game Elite's best player, 94 feet, or for full court at least, for the entire game. And then he ended up knocking down the threes too. Jason Gardner Jr., I wrote blur in all capitals. There is nobody that I saw this weekend that is quicker with the ball in their hands than Jason Gardner Jr. He is electric with the ball in his hands. Another guy on the Adidas 3 SSB circuit that I wanted to touch on quickly is Latrell Alman. He recently set date for an official visit with Indiana next month, June 17th and June 18th. Alman had 25 points on 9 of 12 shooting, had 5 rebounds in a win in Iowa over ASAC for Team Loaded. Team Loaded, a very good team. Latrell Alman, one of the best players on that team. And I talked to him about just Indiana in general and where he stood before the weekend started. And the biggest standout to me was he said that there's the ability to be a household name at Indiana. And he's showing that if you were to come to Indiana, wherever he goes, really, he's shown that with his talent, with his athleticism, his ability to score from pretty much anywhere in the paint and get to his spots, he's showing that he's going to be a household name no matter where he goes. I'm pretty high on Latrell Alman. He's showed a lot throughout this weekend.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest with you. I haven't seen a whole lot of Latrell other than like highlights or whatever. Let me ask you this. What do you think is his strength as a player?
I think he's got the mismatch kind of potential. I think that's the biggest thing for me for Alman. He's got the ability to be a mismatch guy because he showed it at least during his high school season at John Marshall, 44% from three-point range, while standing at 6'9", around 225 pounds. So not only was he able to dominate in the paint, dominate against some of the smaller defenders he faced this past weekend on the AAU circuit in Iowa, but in high school, he was also able to step out and knock down the three as well. So I think, again, we've talked about the guys that DeVries is looking at, the versatile guys. This is one in the Latrell Alman. There's pretty much nothing he can't do. He's not really a great ball handler, not an elite playmaker, but scoring the ball, he can score at all three levels. He showed some promise defensively. He's athletic. He can rebound as well. I think it was 8 rebounds a game this past season as a junior in high school. So Latrell Alman, a guy to keep an eye on. And then I know, speaking of positional versatility, I know a guy you were really high on this weekend, Kyler, was Caleb Gaskins on the EYBL circuit. Just what were your thoughts watching him play? I know he stood out a lot to you.
Maybe my favorite player I watched all weekend, if I really had to kind of narrow it down. Again, complete honesty, with a lot of these IU targets, a lot of times this is the first times I've seen these guys play, other than obviously the in-state guys and stuff like that. So Caleb Gaskins is a guy, never watched him at all until I got a chance to watch him this weekend. A really big guy, 6'8", forward, plays on the wing mostly and stuff. But I think the main thing is with him, and I wrote this down as well, he makes basketball look easy. And that's really telling when you see a player that size and that ability. That in the 2026 class, I think he's a 5-star forward. Yeah, 2026 5-star, really good at just attacking the basket, and he does that very, very easily. It's like, a smaller defender, a smaller wing defender has a really tough time absorbing the contact that he does, and once he gets to the basket, he's going to finish above the rim, and he did that a lot of times. The main thing that I saw out of him that really, really impressed me is he was a kind of an outside-inside type of player, a guy that could play both kind of spots. But when he was in the inside and he was in post-up actions, his ability to make really, really tough shots. He wasn't a guy where I think when you look at his size, I think he can be a guy that can kind of ground and pound, take you to the basket and just score that way. But, there was guys, double teams coming his way and stuff, and he was able to, have some really nice, like I think there was one point, there was like a back-to-back turnaround jumper that he had, just very, very tough, had at least 2 defenders on him at both times. So high athleticism, versatile defender, a guy that I think can guard the wing, can guard the post, just very, very strong. And there was a host of guys, watching him. Indiana assistant coach Drew Adams was over there at one point. I don't know if DeVries had a chance or anybody else had a chance to watch him over the weekend, but I do know that Adams was there. But yeah, I really, really like that guy. Really, really like his potential as a player and just what he can do on the basketball floor.
Again, real quick, just for all of the notes throughout this past weekend for the live period 1, head over to thehoosier.com, head over to the forum, subscribe if you haven't already, and check out our forums. We've got plenty of information from throughout the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, on a host of guys, not just the guys we're talking about on this podcast, but a whole host of guys as well. 2 guys I did want to touch on quickly, Kyler, both on the same team, both play for Team Takeover, who's 7-0 after another perfect weekend on the EYBL circuit. Jordan Smith Jr. and Prince Alexander Moody. I know you liked Prince Alexander Moody. I know you liked his 3-and-D potential. The game I saw wasn't his best game. He was 3 of 10 from the field in the game I saw from him on Sunday. We're recording this on Sunday evening after most of the games are done. But Moody, 11 points, 3 of 10 shooting from the field, 6 rebounds in the Sunday game. But he got some open looks. They just didn't fall. But you really like, Kyler, his 3-and-D potential.
Yeah, I honestly, when I watched the first scouting report that I kind of did on him. The main thing that he was doing was just driving in the lane. I think this was like a high school game or whatever. So obviously in those high school settings, he's the main guy, where he's got a team that's like, that team Takeover is just a really, really balanced team, really balanced team, and a team that, could make it all the way at Peach Jam. They obviously have studs, Jordan Smith Jr., arguably the best player in the 2026 class. They got him on that team, but they've got guys around them that just, balance out that team really well. And it's, kind of a thing where, it may be Jordan Smith Jr.'s, night or day, maybe Prince Alexander Moody's day. Just it's so balanced. But, going back to Moody's game, 6'4" wing, like you mentioned, I thought he was a 3-and-D type of player, and that's what really stood out to me. He was really good as a catch and shoot three guy, a guy that came off screens, even had a few times where he scored off the dribble on threes as well. And then he was really, really active on the defensive end, jumping passing lanes and, getting his long hands, his long arms in the pocket of, the on-ball guards and stuff. So I really like his athleticism. I like his length. And he just, to me, is a guy that just fits what DeVries wants in his system. And obviously DeVries has got a few guys that are coming in that are similar to Moody, but he seems like a guy that, he would just fit like a glove with how DeVries wants to play. He wants guys that can hit threes. He wants guys that can defend, and that's exactly what Prince Alexander Moody is to me.
And his teammate, Jordan Smith Jr., one of the top players in the class, rated number 4 by the On3 industry ranking in the class of 2026, out of Virginia, 6'2", 200 pounds. He plays much bigger than that, though. He looks like he's a linebacker, looks like he's a safety out there on the basketball court. In the game today on Sunday, he had 14 points, 4 assists, 2 steals, and a block. And something that stood out to me about Jordan Smith, Kyler, was that he reminded me a lot of Jalen Hood-Schifino, not just with his ability to kind of do it all. He's not necessarily a big guard as far as height, but he's a big guard as kind of the frame. He's got broad shoulders. He's well built for a 17-year-old kid. And he reminded me of Jalen Hood-Schifino because he can do a little bit of everything. He can score at all 3 levels. He can pass. He can play defense. He can help out and chip out on the glass if you need him to. He can kind of do it all. But the big thing to me, his mid-range jumper. I saw Jordan Smith Jr. take 4 or 5 mid-range jumpers from the free throw line. He had the opportunity to maybe try and drive in, draw some contact, maybe shoot a floater, but he elected to go with that mid-range jumper. And obviously that's what we saw JHS do a ton at Indiana. So Jordan Smith Jr. obviously is one of the top guys in the class, but he really stood out to me even more so than I thought he would, being the number 4 ranked guy in the class. Of course, he and Prince Alexander Moody played in front of Darren DeVries, Kenny Johnson, and Rod Clark this afternoon in Memphis. But just any thoughts? I know you saw Jordan Smith Jr. a little bit. He's just a do-it-all type of guy, great first step. He played off of 2 feet well. Just a great player, obviously deserving, in my opinion. He showed why he's the number 4 ranked player in the 2026 class.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed a perfect eval of what he is. Production's key, right? With him, and he's built like a football player, super strong, super physical and stuff. What I really liked about him too is I feel like he dictates the pace of the game. There was a lot of times where maybe things were getting sped up and he would slow it down, or if he needed to speed it up, he would speed it up. And that's kind of, an alpha move in a way. You see it out of a high school player, a guy that's highly ranked like he is, number 4. Obviously, he's one of the best players in the country. So, 6'3" guard, can play on and off the ball. I think he's a little bit more comfortable on the ball. And that's kind of where he'll be at the college level as well. So really good in ISO situations, I thought. A lot of times, with his teammates would spread out and stuff and just let him go to work. And that's where he would get those mid-range jumpers, pretty similar to Jalen Hood-Schifino, like you mentioned and stuff. So, I think overall physical guard, there's a reason why he's, the number 4 ranked player in the country, a guy that just can do it all. I think on Friday night, he had like 27 points, and then he just had some high level scoring outputs the rest of the weekends. So he's a big time name. It's going to be, difficult as it is with all these other guys that Indiana's looking at because, DeVries is offering some really high level talent, and Jordan Smith Jr. is going to be a guy that's going to be really tough to snag at the 2026 class. A lot of blue bloods are already in on him and stuff, and some of these guys already have an advantage over DeVries because they've been recruiting him for just a little bit longer. So if they can get him on campus for a visit, I think that's a big step in the right direction, but obviously you just kind of wait and see. I do like that they already have a couple guys scheduled for visits this summer, but you get a guy like Jordan Smith Jr. taking a chance on a brand new head coach, and whatnot. So, yeah, we'll see how that kind of plays out. One other quick guys that I just wanted to mention, don't have Indiana offers yet, but Isaiah Hill for Indy Heat 16U. He's a guy that I think Drew Adams recently visited over at Pike. He's from Pike High School. His coach is Jeff Teague. So he's got a good advantage there, former NBA player, Indiana native and Jeff Teague, but nearly 7 foot tall center, super athletic. And he is just an elite rim protector. And he's arguably in the 2027 in-state class, he's arguably the prospect, with the highest potential out of anybody. So he's a guy that really watch out and stuff, super good at rebounding. Uses his length, athleticism, score around the rim, but protecting the paint, changing shots, that is his strength as a player. So wanted to give a quick shout out to him. I totally expect Indiana to offer him sooner than later.
Yeah, not only him for Indy Heat, but also Justin Curry of Noblesville, another wing, another kind of 3-and-D type guy. He had a pretty decent weekend this past weekend for Indy Heat 17U. You mentioned the fact that he was in our forums. You mentioned the fact that he was kind of on the radar of Indiana's previous staff with Brian Walsh. Obviously, Walsh now at Ohio State, but still a lot of high upside there for Curry.
Yeah, I would say I totally expect Indiana to at least look at him. He's just been a guy that's been teetering with high majors. I think he has a Northwestern offer, maybe a couple other high majors as well. But just been a guy that when you look at him, he's built like a shooter, and that's exactly what he's going to be at the next level and stuff. But and I think he would probably be the first to tell you consistency is his main thing. He'll have games where he's scoring 30 plus points, and then there'll be games where he's scoring 0. And I think he even had that at some point this weekend. So he's a guy that I definitely think that Indiana will take a look at. Maybe not offer until he can show some consistency, but he's a very intriguing prospect for sure. We'll just kind of see how that plays out and stuff. But in my notebook, I go a little bit more in depth on him, a little bit and stuff too. So it'll be curious to see kind of where he ends up, high level, high major wise or whatever. And if Indiana will kind of extend that offer and maybe, see what they can get out of him.
Well, again, this just live period 1, still plenty of basketball to come throughout the rest of the summer, throughout the rest of the offseason for all these kids in the 2026, 2027, and even the 2028 class, a little bit of action as well for the 15U kids as well. Again, we have everything for you on thehoosier.com. Head over to the website, subscribe if you haven't already. You can jump into the forums, join the discussion with us. We're on there all the time, updating, providing information, everything like that to keep you all updated in real time on the latest stance of these high school recruits, where Indiana stands in their recruitment, some guys that have stood out to us that maybe aren't on Indiana's radar yet as well, like Isaiah Hill, like Justin Curry. But again, make sure you head over to thehoosier.com, subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, The Hoosier on 3, so you don't miss any more episodes of Talking About the Hoosiers or any other content. Subscribe on Spotify as well, so you can listen on the go if you'd like as well. And again, just live period 1, so still much more content to come throughout the rest of the summer, much more content to come from this past weekend in the coming days from us as well. Again, head over to thehoosier.com to make sure you don't miss anything, and you can stay up to date on all of the latest Indiana high school basketball recruiting news, Indiana basketball recruiting, and non-recruiting information, football as well. We've got you covered over on thehoosier.com. That'll do it, though, for this afternoon. Again, live period 1 pretty much in the books. You can head over to thehoosier.com to check everything out. I'm Zach Browning. He's Kyler Staley. Thanks so much for listening.